Nope. Good evening. Welcome to the City of Shelbyville Mayor and City Council study session. It is April the 1st. I'm about to pull an April Fool's joke on you today. And it's about 6 o'clock, and so we wanted to get started tonight. Our first item on our agenda tonight is public comments. Lisa, do we have any that signed up for public comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have two. Joseph LaMatina is first. If you'll come to the podium. Joey, I think you know this, but we have a 3-minute time limit. The clock will start when you start talking.
Hi, perfect. Thank you, Council. I'm going to talk really fast. I know you had the strategic planning meeting. While MTAS can make recommendations to this city, a blanket all approach may not fit here in Shelbyville. It is up to the City Council to do what is best for Shelbyville. With that, I have my own recommendations to Council to save money. I'm concerned about the duplicate services and removal of those duplicate services because it would be a loss of service to the city. Mr. Feldhouse stated, quote, city people would get a tax cut big time if we're successful on doing this, or at least the city would have more revenue to do some of these things, which I don't believe the city people will get to see one dime of that. I want to know if we have a grant writer here in Shelbyville that could help offset some costs, because I think that's very important. Some things we could do with fire and police is have a volunteer fire/police hybrid to offset some of that payroll like they do in Galveston. We talked a lot about animal control and getting rid of animal control. I emailed Mayor Chad Graham about seeing if they would do it. They said it would take a lot of study. If we did that, we would lose that service. They would do like War Trace, probably with no patrol and only do complaint driven, which would be charged by call. There would be no enforcement of the city ordinances. So to cut costs, we could get a vet on staff at a flat rate like the county does. That would save a lot of money on the spay and neuter services that's currently being outsourced. You know, animal control answered 1,209 calls last year. If we lost the county and city, it would mean less capacity because they're all often at capacity. So we lose that capacity, which means more euthanization there. The county and city work with some in different agencies for adoptions. You know, people complain about animal control, but that means they're doing their job. I also recommend to save money. We go from 6 council to 4 council, one for the north, east, south, and west. That would save us $24,000 a year. Because as it sits right now, it's about $500 per meeting per council member. Also, the city manager makes $135,000 a year with a $5,000 increase every year, plus a $450 a month vehicle allowance, and that's $5,400 a year, plus the cost for conferences and travel expenses. Council to save money, I will do it for half and no vehicle allowance. Capital projects, we never finish them. Parks and Recs wants 50 acres of old landfill to build a park, but we cannot afford to finish the projects at HV Griffin Park without outside funding. Economic development, we put all of our eggs in one basket on North Main Street. It's time to revitalize Madison Street and beautify it and bring back, because nobody's coming in. If they go near screen, they're not coming into town and driving in and spending their tax dollars here. They're going in there and they're going back to Murfreesboro. We need something here for families to do, like a family fun center. We gave Chick-fil-A $300,000, but we need to do something more. This council needs to live within its means like the city people do. In protest of this council, I feel I can no longer serve this city government as vice chairman of the beer board, as someone who needs to stand up for the people. As the city has a new mission statement, so do I. My mission is to be a strong advocate for the citizens of the city of Shelbyville and hold this city council and administration accountable for your actions. I yield my time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
All right, Lisa, I was seeing if we had any comments from our council members.
And the next person signed up to speak is David Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell, you have 3 minutes also. The clock will start when you start speaking.
Okay, so this is the first time I've ever done this before. Part of the reason I'm up here is because of the city council meeting that obviously I did not attend because I thought the allowance of a rooster was in a particular zone, and I did not feel the need to come up here. I do feel like roosters are not allowed in high density areas or within trailer parks or anything like that, but I live right across from the Tyson plant, and all of us own about 0.5 acres or more. And I feel like that with the current city codes that we have towards roosters, it's taken away our rights to homestead on our land. With the shortages of chickens and other animals, I feel like that it is important for this city to recognize that a rooster is important to people that decide to homestead for healthier eating, produce their own eggs and produce their own chickens. And when I moved here 3 years ago, that's one of the things that this city had to offer because they did allow these particular animals on there. I feel like that animal, I'm one of the 1,000 people that that complain to animal control because they do allow animals just roam free. There could be better control of animal control. Um, they cited me for animals that did not belong to me. They allowed pit bulls to come onto my property multiple times, or they let a animal eat the guts out of my chickens in plain sight, and they allowed the dog to go back to their owner without quarantining, checking for rabies, or any of her fines or penalties or anything like that. So I do have an complaint about animal control and how they handle business. And I feel like as somebody that wants to be better on the way they eat and serve this community by maybe selling eggs if I have to, because everybody complained about the price of eggs. I have eggs, but can't really sell them if I have dogs roaming around, killing the chickens and stuff like that. But I feel like a rooster is a vital importance of being part of a homestead because they protect the flock and it doesn't bother anybody. It's not a nuisance.
Thank you, David.
All right, thank you.
And thank you, Joe. Anyone else, Miss Lisa?
I don't have anyone else signed up. Don't see anyone else.
One of the things I appreciate about Shelbyville, Bedford County in Tennessee is public comments like that, and we get to hear from our folks, and we appreciate that. And we do take it to heart. Our next item on our agenda is city manager update. City manager.
Because we don't, so everyone knows, we don't need the microphones anymore. We really haven't needed them since we started with the owl system, but we've left them now. We took them down for the, moving the furniture around, so we didn't need them, we didn't put them back up.
Mayor, any of the things that I would normally give in the city manager update are agenda items. So instead of repeating it, we'll just address it during the agenda.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that. And I did notice your name on a lot of these different things. All right, discussion items tonight. Number one is the fiscal year 2023-2024 annual audit and comprehensive financial report. And Mr. Patrick Lyle with Winnett and Associates, is that still correct?
That's correct.
All right, is here with us tonight, and he can point fingers and cat.
Thank you.
I was nearly sick tonight.
So, okay.
I think I can make it in one swoop here.
Thank you, sir.
How everything's done. I didn't want to do it.
Oh, that was so much.
Oh, my goodness.
You might-
No, I'm not in friendly territory. I'm not gonna respond. I'm not gonna respond to that.
I'll say,
I'll get it.
He'll get you
All right.
next year.
In town at Winnett Associates. I'll keep my comments brief. We certainly had a good audit. I'll follow a similar path as I've done in the past. I'll make a few comments on the numbers. We do have one finding, and then I have two what I just call recommendations. You're welcome to stop me if you'd like along the way. Welcome to do that. Just a moment to talk about what I do. I'm an independent auditor. I'm performing a financial audit. We have this, roughly 100-page report here. This information here is management's responsibility of the city. I'm to come in here and say, well, do I think the numbers in here are correct? Do I think they're in the right places? Do I think all the notes and schedules that are supposed to be in here are in there? That's the kind of thing I'm focused on. So it may better be discussed by what we don't do, right? So I'm not giving you a report on internal controls, for instance. I'm not giving you a report or an opinion on whether or not you've complied with laws and regulations. I'm not giving you a report on, I'm not performing like a fraud examination. So I'm not giving you a report that that I've looked at fraud. I'm giving you an opinion whether or not the numbers are in here, what we call materially correct in the accounting world, which basically means we're not looking at pennies to be, in the right place. We're looking to see that things are significantly in the right place, reported correctly. All right, so page 7 is our auditor's report. And as the mayor said, we are dealing with the June 30th, 24 time period. And of course, this is a 3-page report, so I'm only going to just mention that we have issued you guys in our opinion section there what's called an unmodified opinion. The layman's term is a clean opinion, and I always say, no other auditing firm is going to give you a better opinion. We give you the top, full, clean bill of health. All right, let's turn to page 16 for a moment. Okay, first I'll draw your attention to the fact this is basically a balance sheet. And we see we have 2 columns and then a total column. Governmental activities is the first column. Second column is business type activities. So let me point out here, business type activities is the power system stuff. We don't audit that. We do have to have it in here. When I say we don't audit, I mean Winnet Associates does not. They have their own auditor. So my comments are always focused on, what you guys are presiding over, which would be this first column, this governmental activities column. Now, I don't normally point this page out when I do my comments. So the reason I'm bringing it up is because I'm going to talk about it later when I mentioned we have one finding and it relates to this page. So I wanted to point it out to you. But as some explanation here, not to get too much into accounting, but several years ago, the powers that be in governmental accounting said, you know what, governments don't keep their books like businesses do, and that's true. Your funds that you guys preside over routinely, they're closer to kind of a cash basis. So, for instance, if you write a check for a police department, it costs $60,000. That's a cost on the income statement, right? Boom, total. But if you were in a business, you would not do that. You would say, well, that's an asset. We bought an asset, and you put it on the balance sheet as an asset. So that's just an example, and I'll refrain from any more accounting teaching. It's not my business. But so that's what they were trying to do, and that's what this is doing is incorporating kind of a business look at the city. So let me just point out right in the middle of the page, actually not in the middle, up a little bit from the middle is a total asset line. You see in that first column, we got $105,714,000 some odd dollars. Right above that are lines for what are called capital assets. So that's what I just mentioned, right? We buy this building or we buy another building, we buy cars or hangars or whatever. And in this business type look, we call them an asset, and that's what that $50 million number is and that $9 million number is. And so we say you have about $60 million of assets in the city. So you're not going to see that on your funds that that Kay keeps up with and reports to you. All right, so let's put that aside for a second, and I'm not going to talk about that until a little bit later, so you can put that out of your mind for a moment. Turning to page 18. All right, so these are the funds, just like you would preside over them, day to day. We have a column for the general fund, and then all the other funds, and then a total. And of course, the other funds would be things like State Street Aid and Hotel Motel and Capital and that kind of thing. I'm only gonna make one comment on this page and point out the very top line, cash. Everybody likes to know where we are with cash. The far right shows the total cash of the government is 26,673,000. That was up $500,000 from the year before. So always curious as to, how we were the year before, so I just thought I'd point that out. So about 500,000. Go on to the next page, page 19. All right, same thing. This is our our income statement for our funds. It's a nice look at, a pretty concise look at where our revenues come from and then what we spend them on. So for instance, of course, the top line there, 17 million or so for taxes is of course, our largest line item here. In the middle of those revenues, we see intergovernmental. That's the first column there in the general fund, 3.9 million. The biggest thing there is where the state will share sales tax with you. So 2.9 million of that number is where the state shares sales tax with you. Other items that would be in intergovernmental would be grants, for instance, would be in that line. The next line there, charges for services, 2,510,000. This would be anything from codes charging building permits to the airport leasing, fuel sales at the airport, Parks and Rec charging the type of fees they charge. So 2.5 million for charges for services. And then we also see an interesting line, the last one under revenue, investment earnings. The general fund had investment earnings of $1,456,000. That's way up, $925,000 increase over the previous year. So interest rates just went very well for the city last year. So you are earning some interest on your money there, $1,456,000. And then just quickly, we see, of course, the expenditures by area, general government, 4.7 million, Parks and Rec, 2.7, public safety, of course, that's fire and police, 11.3, they're the largest area, public works, 5.8, and then so forth. Again, a good quick look at where your money comes from and where it goes. Bottom line at the our change in fund balance, which is, kind of the closest thing we have in government to a profit and loss. Of course, we don't talk about, our things like that in the government, but the closest we have to it, right at $1 million there, right? $1,113,000 in the general fund. So your fund balance went up about $1 million for June 30th, 24. I promise you I will start moving quicker. Page 20, page 21, this is several pages. I'm only going to make a comment on this first page, but this is the budget and actual for your general fund. So that first column on that page we were just at, this is the exact same stuff from that, only we got a lot more detail. So I just wanted to make a comment or two here on the revenues here. On page 21, I'm looking in the third column, it says actual. So that means, that's our actual numbers, not our budgeted numbers. So we see our first number is property taxes. So 8,643,000 in property taxes for June 30th, 24. That if you were to put last year's report right there next to it, it would have been over 9 million. So this was the first year that the property tax decrease hit the books here. So so roughly $900,000 less than you would have seen the year before for that line. Local sales tax, of course, the next largest number on the page, 6,886,000. And if we go on down, the next largest is 2,913,000. That's that state sales tax allocation that I mentioned a moment ago. And I will point out, as we did, some of you may recall last year, we pointed out that sales tax had kind of taken over property taxes as our number one revenue provider in the city. And we can see that gap is widened with, of course, the property tax decrease. Those two sales taxes together come to 9.8 million, whereas your property taxes is 8.6 million. So we're firmly in a spot where sales taxes are our number one supporter in the city. All right. Jumping all the way to page 32. This is nice because there's only one real number on the page. That makes it easy to look at. Again, page 32. All this 16,717,000 is, that's how much assets were in your pension plan as of June 30th, 24. That year began with 15.3 million roughly and ended with 16.7. So you can see that it went up $1.4 million. And if we just turn one page, we'll see why. Of course, the first line there, $924,248, that's where you guys contributed money to the pension plan. But the next big line, $1,452,000, net increase in fair value investments. That's just simply the investments there did really good. June 30th, 24 was a great year of your investments. Just fair market value just went up 1.4 million. So obviously the total additions there to your pension was 2.3 million. You did, of course, pay benefits of 904,000 to pension members of the pension plan. And then, of course, as we see there, the increase there was $1.4 million. All right, I'm getting close here to stopping numbers talk. Page 98. Grants, that's just, people are always curious as to, how many grants we have. You can see the total federal and state grants, 2.6 million, federal there at the top, state at the bottom. So that was very, that was probably, I'm sure, the highest in the history of the city. But you see the various ones, and the largest one there toward the bottom, 2,080,000. That's where there was funding of the access road there for the, I guess it's to Dukeson. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but is that sounds kind of close? I'm sure there's different acceptable pronunciations, but anyway, so that's what that state money there was, 2,080,000 for that. All right, page 102. So this is, I mentioned we did have one finding. I don't want to read it. I'd rather just paraphrase, but I mentioned a moment ago, all right, back to that page where I pointed out that when you buy a car, if we did it this business wise, we would have it as an asset on our books, and we had $60 million of stuff there. Well, one thing that is an asset to the city that wouldn't be to most businesses is infrastructure. So there's some ownership in some, a bridge or a road or something like that. And the most commonly that would come from, so let's say a contractor builds out a subdivision and then they're done and they say, now you maintain it, city, right? It's yours. And so they're essentially donating those assets in return for you guys maintaining them, right? And so it came to light during the audit that several subdivisions weren't recorded. And so we simply are commenting here to put, controls in place to make sure they're all recorded. And I'm confident that that's being implemented. All that's off the, what do you say? It's non-cash, right? It's not something that goes through the book, so it makes it a little more easier to me, right? When you don't have to make sure the bank account balances, it's donated assets. So, okay, so my last topic here is this letter that's in loose in there. I mentioned I had two, what I just referred to as recommendations. So they're not findings. They're just a couple of things I thought worthy of writing down, but it didn't rise to calling them a finding. And I will read these. We see the cybersecurity plan. While we acknowledge that certain steps have been taken to address cybersecurity, we'd like to recommend that the city's general government consider adopting a comprehensive cybersecurity plan. This plan would provide for the protection of the city's facilities from unauthorized use, alteration, ransom, or destruction of electronic data. And then equipment usage. We'd like to recommend the city's general government develop a written comprehensive policy regarding the use of city equipment. Anyone who checks out equipment should sign a form that documents what was taken, including condition of equipment, purpose, and the date taken. Forms would be signed again when the equipment is returned and indicate the condition of the equipment returned and date returned. So I'm giving there some practical comments on what I'm referring to there. So where these come from, the cybersecurity plan in my world of tax returns, the federal government now says if we're gonna allow you to have a number assigned to you to file tax returns, you have to swear that you have what's called a WISP, written good security plan. written, I can't remember the second one. Sorry. Anyway, it's called the WIS. And then, so we're having these things come down on us. And then Tennessee has actually started requiring, your public utilities, like your power system, they have to have a written, cybersecurity plan. In fact, when we audit public utilities, we don't audit the power systems, we audit others. When we file their audits, we have to actually swear that they have them in place. And if they don't, we have to give them a finding that says they don't have them in place. So the state is starting to press this down, and it's just a good common sense thing to have. Now I say that, we acknowledge it's not like this isn't being addressed, but it seems, but it's not in one place and, written and addressing comprehensively. So, and again, this is not a finding, it's a recommendation. And then, of course, when you have the conversation of a cybersecurity, along with that comes with, well, what happens about protecting information that leaves the building? And so that leads to a discussion about, if you got, what are you doing with your laptops and things like that? So, and what I did find is there is a checkout form being used, but not a part of a written policy for computers. But my comment is more broad here. To encompass any, let's take a step back and look at any kind of equipment. So it may be, I didn't look at every department. Again, not finding a recommendation, but it could be that we need to look back at the public works and see, what do we do with the tools? How do we, where are things being, excuse me, a common example might be is like at our church, when occasionally somebody says, I need 10 tables to use for something, and we got a little checkout procedure, because we want to make sure 10 tables come back. Right. So it's that kind of an idea. And so again, while there are some of these actually are in place, we're saying, hey, let's have a written policy that's kind of comprehensive for the city as a whole, because I did not go looking at every department. That basically concludes my comments. I do want to express thanks to Kay and her staff, because we do camp out, and she's and others are under constant threat of an auditor coming upstairs and bugging her, and I appreciate that. I don't think anybody can say that they didn't notice the auditors were there. She's always asking, when are you going to leave? They're wanting the space. But really, I do appreciate it. They put up with us very well. But does anybody have any questions about the audit process or any of the comments made?
Thank you, Mr. Lyle.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you, Ms. Parker, and our city staff, our city manager, and others that work with them on those financial reports. And yes, they did camp out for a number of days down in the dungeon, I call it, down in the bottom of conference room down there. Thank you so much for all of your work that you do. Number 2, renewal of employee medical, dental, and vision insurance. And Scott, we'll ask you to update us on that, please.
Thank you, Mayor. What I'm gonna do is just toss it to Kate, because we did have a meeting and everything, and her and Mr. Wendell are a great team.
I'm gonna toss it to Lacey.
I'm not good at catching.
So it's kind of the same, from last year. Originally, according to the formula that they do, we would have had an 11.56% increase in premiums. But they worked it around and they said if we'll renew early for July 1st, or get locked in, they can do it for 5% increase in the medical rates, no increase in dental and vision, and all the benefits would stay the same. And that 5% increase in medical rates, would result in an increase to the city of about $115,630. And the city currently spends an estimated 2.3 million on employee medical benefits annually, so. I think it was put in your packet, kind of what our current benefits are and deductibles and those type of things. The benefits would not change but the cost would go up 5%. That's if we, lock it in now. Or I think it said by April 30th maybe, but the renewal would still be 7/1.
But there's nothing here, if the mayor and city council has any questions, we do have a good property show that.
Appreciate Mr. Agnew being here. You've been representing us a long time, haven't you?
Yes, sir, I have. And I appreciate the business.
All right. Any questions or comments on that? All right. Number 3 is city projects update. And Scott, you ready?
The first one I'd like to touch on is the flood protection system improvements. And of course, this is the flood pipes. And it's been a long process, but just to give a little recap, the bids were actually opened in October of 2023 and contract in the amount of $1.8 million, $30,000. The budget for this project is $2.7 million. So we're anticipating delivery of the pumps third or fourth quarter of this year. Again, it's not every day or every manufacturer that can make such a elaborate process as we have. Two is currently being designed for the housing, for the new pumps to be able to fit and work properly in the housing. And based on current progress of the pump fabrication and design plans, the anticipated start of construction is likely fourth quarter of 2025 or first quarter of 2026. And this information is provided to who unfortunately couldn't be here because he had another conflict. The Derrick Street, I think we're going to address that on down, but we have had some successful bids. And one more I want to touch on that is not on Will's report, but it is the transportation alternative program, the TAP grant for the River Walk and River Overlook. And 2 meetings have been held since we were last all together. And one of them was with our engineers, and progress has been made. And then yesterday, Buck and I met with key TDOT officials in Nashville. And they are doing everything they can within their power and their scope to expedite this process. And we're making this big push to have, for an effort to have things ready to go on October, commitment of construction funds, October 31st. Now that is a very ambitious goal, but the NEPA is finished. The NEPA is back to the full TDOT review. It went through the entire cycle of all the various state departments and federal departments, and now it's back in TDOT's hands. And we're having weekly contact with them to try to keep the project moving forward. And the others will probably be addressed, Mayor, as we go down.
Okay. And like I stated at this point, that our flood pumps that we have are working at less than 100%, but they were used when we had the 6.5 inch rain recently. And they did, all 3 of them work, I think, and 1 worked all night, I think. Is that correct, Matt?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and our fire department has to go out and manually turn those on and turn them off, right?
Stay with me.
In the rain.
Yes, sir.
We're trying to get that all automated so we don't have to worry about you folks. Yes, sir.
Rick, quick question on the River Walk, that tap, we sent a request for an extension on that grant. Did they grant that request or have we heard back on that?
There is, their legal team is currently working on that. Not because they have an issue with extending it, but the language of the contract is not the common tap language of a contract that was signed back in 2022. And so their TDOT's legal and local project office are revisiting that. But to answer your question, yes, they're going to give us the time needed to complete this project. And if I may add for Councilman Feldhouse, they're very excited about this project. When we shared with them what this mayor and city council is directing on so many of the projects in the downtown area, several of the top TDOT officials are looking forward to coming down and visiting. Not only during construction and stuff, but just to take in everything Shelbyville has to offer. Sorry, sir.
The only question I have is not to rain on your parade or your pump parade, but the pumps being ready in the fourth quarter or first quarter of next year happens to be our rainy season like we're in.
Yeah.
So hopefully they're on time and that kind of thing, but I would say you're probably looking at installation and construction more next summer. In the wintertime.
We're
It's called middle of rainy season, that's exactly what good comment,
Having pumps full down.
no doubt about it.
yes, and that's all been taken into consideration.
Through the engineers, work their timeline.
And Scott and I, Mr. Collins and I had talks this afternoon about the cost on some of these projects that we're doing, especially that, the Riverview District and things like that. And there are things that come up when we don't, expect, during some of those things. And so we're trying to just keep an eye on that and keep everything as, close to budget as possible and not let it, go over budget. So we'll talk about a few things this afternoon. All right, anyone have any other comments about that? All right, the Riverview Entertainment District phase update. Scott, tell us about where we are on that.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the issues we're being faced with is Atmos Energy took advantage of this situation to upgrade those lines throughout the district area. And so we can start digging as quick as we'd like to, because we can't have both sides of the road totally dug up at the same time. But they are in final stages and they should be completed. And on site visit today, Curl Engineering are doing additional excavation and with plans on starting to install the conduit that's going to allow the wires to be put. Now, there will be a request to utilize some of the remaining $750,000 of the budget to do phase 1B, and that's the actual relocation of the aerial utilities to conduit installed in phase 1A. Get rid of the utility poles. And they gave us a breakdown on the cost of that. I don't think I have it with me, but right here. Okay. The Shelbyville Power System to pull their conduit and put it underground is $19,900. AT&T $48,002.05. United $32,089.30. Charter gave us an estimated cost depending on field conditions of $8,000 to $12,000. Then a contingency in case something goes on at 38. So we're hoping to complete the phase 1B with council's approval and get all the underground utilities placed with the approval of the council. The money is within the budget, within the scope of the work.
Does this eat up our $750,000 that we had in the budget this year if we use this, is this pretty much it? And we've used it all in phase one
For
of
this
this.
phase, yes, sir, it'd be very close.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, number 5 is land leases, and this is at the Shelbyville Municipal Airport, and our director of our airport, Mr. Paul Perry, is with us. And Paul, would you update us on that, please?
Yes, sir. On number 5, we're looking at 2 leases that actually are the last piece of land that's available for development that has access to taxiways. So for us to do anything else, for me to come back to you, we'll have to have some taxiways built. But these are 2 different projects that are consisting of larger hangars than usual, than what I've usually, but the land lease itself and the verbiage and things of that nature are all very similar. It's the same kind of concept, just larger facilities. It's more on the north end of the facility of our airport there, past the terminal building. And it is, the first one with Justin Brady is for, they're looking for something a little different, which is a 80 by 60 hangar, which our standard sizes are 60 by 60. But what they're looking to do is put doors on 2 ends, because they've got 2 larger airplanes they want to put in tail to tail. Be a little different as far as configuration on that, and with our some taxiways that will be built. But we have engineer to make sure there's no issues with any of the standards that we have at the airport and things like that to make that work. And of course, it'll be up to that tenant to make sure that they fulfill any of the utility requirements and things of that nature in that area. And the other one is just to the north of that one is a larger 80 by 80 hangar. This is a gentleman, Mr. Nelson is a gentleman that's relocating from Denver. And they're kind of doing it the way that we've gotten multiple phone calls with. They know they want to come to Middle Tennessee, so they start looking for a place for their airplane. And are not finding any places for airplanes that are inside. This gentleman has an antique aircraft. It's a Boeing Stearman, which has to be inside. So it is so with this process, he found us that could be willing to lease him land, and also met the requirements of his family who are looking for the type of land for a house in this area. So it works out better. So she's turning over the hangar to him, and she's headed looking for the house so that they can relocate from Denver. And it's funny, the very next week after this one, I had somebody doing the same thing for California. So it's a lot of scenarios that you see where hangar shortage is a big problem across Middle Tennessee. So many people want to relocate and unfortunately are not finding homes for their aircraft. So that's just something that this gentleman is building a larger one because he knows that's a problem, in hopes that he potentially can maybe help somebody else house their aircraft. That's why he's looking for an 80 by 80 hangar, which is about, our standard hangar is 60 by 60. So this will be a nice addition. And as always, like I said, it's pointed out that with these land leases, at the end of 30 years, at the end of if they took the full terms of that, it does get turned over to the city and it becomes their property. We also have it set up to where we have the first right of refusal. So if for some reason they get out of the business or decide that for some reason they no longer want the hangar, we can buy that hangar at whatever the fair market value is at that time. And as was pointed out, as far as some of our leases as well, one thing that was missed on the copy that you have there that I'm glad Councilman pointed out to me, that our escalation clause was left out of it. So we'll get that taken care of. And also, one other thing that's different from Brady to Nelson, Brady has some business interests in both those airplanes. And so he does have a $2 million policy to cover, but the other gentleman is individual and does not. So he is requested, as we've been standard, was dropping the insurance for individuals down to $1 million coverage. Any questions on that?
Is that Craig T. Nelson?
Why?
Question, if they build these hangars, can they sublease space in there to somebody else?
They can with airport authority approval.
Okay.
Yes, they have to go through and make sure that they meet all the necessary requirements. They can't like rent it out to a dry cleaner or something like that.
Right. Okay, Paul, if you're not tired, I'm sorry.
Yeah, this might be a gender or Lisa question. I caught on this month, but last month we approved one and it didn't have an escalation clause anyways. Were we too late to fix that?
They signed it. I know we have. I sent it to you to sign.
No, he has not signed it yet.
Okay.
I know that was I went back and watched the September study session. There was a big point of discussion that we wanted 3% escalation clauses in all these land leases, and none of these have happened.
Yeah,
I remember that
it's
now.
pointed out, yes, we had a gentleman argue through that, and when it did that, I think I adjusted my template, and so I didn't get it fixed back for the corrections on that.
Okay.
Can we add it to the one that the gentleman who signed?
Have you got a hold of it? You have it.
I have it,
Paul has it, but it hasn't been signed.
it has not been signed by Mr. Cooper yet.
Well, we'll talk that third.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Opportunities, Shelbyville Municipal Airport. Paul, if you would continue.
Okay, the first one listed there is under Hawkins Flight Academy, and they are, for your information, we have 2 flight schools at our airport besides MTSU. Those are 2 private flight schools. Hawkins has been with us for just a little over a year. They just celebrated their birthday not too long ago. And they are currently located in a space upstairs that is going to be remodeled. They were aware of that when they moved in, and they knew that that was going to be the case. That has to be remodeled to meet our ADA standards, and as part of the grant process that we received a little bit ago, we'll be having to move them from their space. So they're looking for their own space, and so what they've come to us with is an opportunity, and the reason why they're asking for some discussion up front is because there's some upfront cost on their part that they've got to do. And what they're looking at is putting a facility out as a temporary facility that's similar to what's been done by MTSU. And would be located if you're looking at the terminal from the road from 231, it'd be to the right. So it'd be in the front, but to the right, covering up basically the EA hangar that I think most people, the breakfast hangar, there's the white hangar that's to the south of the terminal building that some people are used to seeing. It would cover that, it'd be in front of that. With that building, they're looking at about 5,000 square feet. And with that, they're looking at being able to have some space, not only for their students to meet and do pre-flights and things of that nature, but also to have places to meet, such as for EAA and a few others that are struggling with places to meet because they've outgrown our facilities. We don't have enough space for them, at least until such time as we can remodel our building. And so they're looking at something. And also we limit and close our building at 7 o'clock. And so they want to be able to meet afterwards and things like that. So this would allow some space for that. And it will also allow for a home for Motlow's flight simulator lab. Currently it's housed over here by the old hospital there in the business center. And Motlow feels that they need to be located where their clients are, because it doesn't make sense for flight simulators to be in town when there's a nice big airport where all their students are. And so Motlow would be one of their first tenants in that area. They would lease space from Hawkins, who would in turn be leasing space from us, the land. They would be leasing space in the building, and with that, we'll be bringing in the simulators that they have in the simulator lab and allow that for both flight schools to be able to use it there on the airport. So that's another area. And then also the second item on the list, Happy Hotels, they potentially could be leasing a spot from them too to have a place for their business, which I'll talk about here in just a second. So it's a large meeting space building. It's like I said, it's a temporary spot because of the fact that we have plans eventually to demolish the older EA building that's there and expand out that direction with some hangars, just because of the fact that there's only so much beachfront property. And so we have to use what we can use. So we've explained to them that it would be temporary, and they're under that. They are aware of that. That's why they're looking at something that they could bring in temporarily and then relocate potentially to the space that we have currently leasing to MTSU as a temporary parking lot. So this would be something that they could eventually, which is behind the feed store. So that's another thing that they could build a structure, or erect a structure, I should say, that can be relocated up there at minimal expense and be out and then allow for things for the future. But they're looking at something that's more of an education center is more the way they want to look at it, because it's going to be joint use is the way they would like to do that. But their main ask is, before they go to the expense, because of these type buildings that they're looking for, there's a timeline on them. And so by the time they get a yes, those buildings get sold. So they're constantly looking for something like that to mainly they need a head nod, I guess, would be the way to do it before they feel comfortable with being able to go out and put that expense out there of something that would be that type of building. And some of you may have been able to see the MTSU building from 31, but it would be something similar. It would look similar to that, except we would be, of course, be working with the codes and planning to make sure that it meets all necessary requirements to look good. And of course, the airport, I want it to look good too, because of the front door it is to the community. So they're willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that it meets all of the airport authority's requirements as far as that's concerned.
On the hangar leases, we end up owning them at the end of the lease. This looked like a much shorter lease, so we'll never own this building. This will be theirs.
That's correct. It is, and I'm glad you brought that up. I forgot to mention that. It is a short-term lease. So it's, they're currently asking for, and we're still negotiating a little bit on that, was like 3-year terms. So they're looking at a 3-year lease and the potential for a renewal for another 3 years. Was sort of the time frame that they're looking for, because of the fact that based on my layout of it would be at least 10 years before I could get to that piece of property anyway to do any development on it. So that sort of gave them a little bit of a pad to when they can move it. But yes, that would be something it's only their building. They would build it and then move it.
But you're not approving it a lease.
Right, yeah, we're just.
You're not approving it a lease at this meeting.
Yeah,
That's
just
not what that's at all.
concept in general.
This is just a
Yeah.
concept that doesn't actually bind you, and they said that at the airport authority, they understood that they were just putting their faith out there that the city would enter into something with them.
Because even what they're looking at, because those buildings are partial, so it could all depend on how the final footprint could be on if they could get a deal on X, if they can get a build, on 3 buildings, 4 buildings, 5 buildings, whatever the scenario might be, would change the final footprint. So we couldn't give you a final footprint to give you the square footage, but it would be something very similar. It would be a layout, short-term lease, but it would be layout based on the square footage that they lease on the land from us.
We're not voting tonight, but I wanted to kind of say my comments that I had attended a couple of the airport meetings, and I want us to caution at the airport or anywhere we are in Shelbyville, with the growth that we have, we only have so much space, and I want us to be very careful of how many buildings we have at the airport and not overcrowding for the future, and looking at 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years down the road. And also, wanted to make sure about the air traffic, about how many planes we're gonna have out there. And we still don't have a control tower, but we're looking at that in the future. And as we get more and more planes out there, we're gonna have that situation. Hawkins Flight Academy, my concern there was, where are we gonna park those people who come to that building? That is a grassy area around that. Are they gonna pay for paving it, or what are we gonna do there?
Part of the discussion, which is, if you give the nod, we'll flesh all that out. But part of what we talked about is where we're locating the building is potentially putting some parking between that building and the EAA building with some temporary, potential gravel parking or something of that nature, because of the fact that it's hidden between 2 buildings, and be able to use or a different type of material that may not be quite like paving, but something that'd be more of a chip, something to that unnecessary, something that would be a little bit nicer than gravel, but not necessarily the expense of the paving, because of the fact that I don't want to have to turn around and tear it back up, because of the fact there's no way to lay it down to proper FAA standards, but also it won't necessarily fit the way I need it. But they are looking at something that would be hidden. Even the parking itself, you would see the cars, of course, parked there, but as far as whatever it is, they're going to address that with it. Now, their location, as far as ADA, I know is a concern for some, and the ramps would still be installed on the buildings, but they would be able to use our existing handicap parking that's associated with the airport. But we already have parking issues at the airport, so this is actually going to, at their expense, going to expand some parking area closer to that building that will help out. If nothing else, it'll get rid of all of their current, employees that are parking in our main front lot right now.
Okay, thank you, Paul. I wanted to just kind of, you remember me saying that those.
Absolutely.
I'm just, we're growing so fast, I don't want all of the property at the airport, I don't want all these planes in there. MTSU is our main project. The MTSU and all those students that's gonna be in the air. And so I know Hawkins started out with one plane, and now they've got 5 planes. Or they're gonna get 5 planes, am I correct in that?
Yes, and they're,
Okay.
they currently
So
have
we
5,
have
they're
to
looking
be-
at another one right now.
And I know you folks are, and I know you do a great job of managing out there, and your staff does a great job. I just want us to be careful. We're gonna get, and these people moving to Denver, Colorado, that's great. Isn't that great? That we're drawing people that way. But let's just be careful in the city, in the air, at the airport, everywhere we are, that we watch that and look at that future growth. How's it gonna affect us? And how's it gonna affect our community?
Absolutely. And,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things that we've been actually, addressing quite a bit as far as the airport layout plan that you approved a while back. The length it's taken to do this that study has been a lot longer than normal because of the fact that our growth is being so quick. They wanted to make sure that all the numbers were analyzed. They wanted to make sure there was a lot of areas on the data up front before they put things on paper as far as where buildings were located. They want to analyze a lot of the forecasting and things of that nature for up to 20 years out from now. So there's a lot of extra steps that we're taking at the beginning than has been in most general aviation airports I've been associated with.
Appreciate you doing that in the airport authority board with. Any questions for Paul?
I still have one more.
Oh, do you? I thought you were finished. Go,
I'll
Paul.
stand up here, as Tom's not here, I'll take a, no, I'm just kidding. All right, with, Happy Helicopters is a tour group that is looking to relocate. They have, unfortunately for them, good for us, they had, a business that was affected by the Hurricane Helene. So they had just started their business at a new location in the mountains there and was washed away. So they've actually, over the last little bit, instead of being able to do tourism and things of that nature, they've been doing relief. They've been over the last little bit, they've been flying relief efforts and things of that nature. The helicopters that they have. They are of the lineage of some of the Shelbyville helicopter tours that you've seen. For those that have gone down the strip coming out of Shelbyville into Pigeon Forge, those helicopters are right there. They have some family ties in the area. They started looking in our area and thought, with the tourist development that's happening with the nearest and with the cars and even Jack Daniels and others, but they have some agreements with flying out of Nashville. But it would work better for them to base here and then fly into that area and things like that, so that they can potentially do different types of tours, air tours. There's also some other things, and that's going to be their bread and butter. They're also going to potentially do some instructing from there with for students, for helicopters, for those of you that want to pick that up. I know that some people have some busy schedules and you stand to pick up a helicopter to get where you need to go. So you might be able to decide to do that. And but they'll be doing some of that. And then they also have, if things go well, they'll be building, this is the reason why you're looking at this today is for an operation agreement, basically to operate off without, to make sure that they can make this work. And if it does work like they plan, we have a place for them to build their own building and helipad on the north end by Aryan Lightning, because that actually is a little bit lower, which would cost us considerably to try to build it up to fixed wing aircraft, be able to taxi to. So a helicopter works great. They can still use the approach, but not necessarily be in the way of the fixed wing, and can come in and out, and they can also be seen from the road. It would match in with some of the other tourism things that are happening in the area. And then they can also, from there, do tours all different places, all the whiskey tour from the air.
Mayor, if I may. So you are, again, not doing an agreement at this point. The gentleman wants to do some marketing studies, but that's expensive, as he said. It's expensive an investment. He just wanted to see that the council would even entertain the idea of doing an operating agreement with him. It's sort of another head nod from you all next week. But you would probably allow it.
Yes, this particular season of what he's looking into is, only thing he'll be getting from the city is purchasing fuel. He's not leasing land because he can operate off grass, he can operate off our existing ramp, so he doesn't really need any space. However, one of the things that was discussed and may or may not work, we'll see how that works, would be a small corner office in that building that Hawkins is talking about, so that he can check in people and they show them where they're going to go, and they have to weigh you as well. For those that haven't done the helicopter, they have to balance out where all the passengers are seated. So they make you weigh, which is entertaining always.
Anyone else have any questions? Thank you, Paul, for your report.
Thank you.
All right, number 7 is Juneteenth celebration sponsorship, and we'll ask our city manager to address that, please.
Yes, sir. The Juneteenth celebration committee has submitted the local grants application. And my apologies, it's not on your iPads right now, but we do have the paperwork, we just didn't get it uploaded. But the request is for $2,500 this year. Last year, I believe the mayor and council voted $1,000, and the year before was $800. So it'll be the pleasure of making good things.
Any comments? Questions? All right, number 8, 2025 Professor Sidney Harris Legacy Scholarship. And Scott, would you tell us about that?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a first-time request from this event, and it is going to be held in Bell Buckle. And as it states, it is the Sidney Harris Legacy Scholarship. And they do scholarships for students. And this is uploaded on your iPads, and there's 4 levels of sponsorship. Their request is for $2,500, which is the top level. Gold level is $1,500, silver $1,000, bronze $500. Again, it is with mayor and city council to consider doing the sponsorship program as a sponsor.
Are we talking hotel, motel money?
Yes, all this will come from the hotel, motel, based funds.
The scholarship would? That's not
The
a
sponsorship.
yeah,
The
just a sponsorship, okay.
And then once we sponsor, then they'll do with their money for scholarships. We're not directly doing scholarships.
All right, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and talk about this for a minute, which, I bit my tongue last month when we did this for the Community Foundation, which is a great organization. This looks like a great organization, but this application shows that they're projecting 10 hotel rooms booked, and we're using hotel, motel money to support this as tourism. I mean, at $2,500, we're giving them $250 a hotel room. We could pay for the hotel rooms for less than this. It's definitely not generating that kind of money. We've kind of let this slide into getting back into financing nonprofits, which I thought this council got away from a couple of years ago, rather than actual funding tourism events. And at some point, we need to either set some standards or push back on a couple of these, because again, 10 hotel rooms, and looks like a great scholarship event, looks like a great event that I, 100% agree with what they're doing, but this is not tourism per se. This is us giving a nonprofit a donation, which I wasn't on the council at that point, but I'm fairly certain the council a couple of years ago, and Mr. Feldhouse is our history keeper, could tell me. The council kind of got away from wanting to do all these nonprofit donations because it gets kind of political. There's so many great nonprofits in Shelbyville. How do we pick which ones we give money to and which ones we don't?
The councilman,
Yeah.
mayor and city council did through standard. And, to get anything over 1,000, it's supposed to be a multi-day event. Again, it lies with mayor and city council on how y'all want to proceed, but both of these events were one day.
At the event.
And it's not in the city limits, right?
This event is in Shelbyville.
But we don't have to give them 2,500, that's the top of the line.
Right.
So one day being 1,000 is what we
Yeah.
earmarked is.
Yeah.
Do we have any standards on if it had to be in the city limits or not?
That we did not address because it was assumed. What happened there, so I didn't foresee outside the city requests.
Good comments, good question.
One of the
Anyone
things-
else have anything to say?
One of the things I'd like to see is for us to go back a few years when we had our tourism committee that would make recommendations or kind of, what's the proper word, front run. They screened the applicants on policy, and that group could sort of dole out the money. Because I said it at the time when we changed the policy, this council does it, it's gonna turn political, and every month you're gonna get nickel and dime, which isn't nickel and dimes to a lot of people, but it just puts you in a hot potato every single month. It's, you hate to turn it down. Is it used for the taxpayer dollars, or are we just an easy tap because, oh, yeah, I gotta support them in the council race, I think I can pull that off, that's where I think we've gotten back into that mode, and we need to revisit that policy.
Yeah, we even had a 5-year reduction of the percentage we would give, and we should be about to zero.
It went out.
It's
gone.
over, yeah.
Realistically, we don't see
And at the
anything.
time, the thought
That's
process
over.
was that the
Yeah.
taxpayers, if they wanted to give to a certain charity or a nonprofit, it should be their decision, not the council to spend their money.
And the sponsorships or whatever, they were mainly for beds and heads, is what it's called.
Yeah.
Head, no, heads and heads. Dyslexia, heads and beds.
There's a written policy on that. Then you'll switch. So if you would like, if you want to bring it back.
I can't believe we didn't have the verbiage about
Yeah.
inside the city limits for the event, though. I can't believe we didn't do that.
That's not in there?
That's,
They would probably never assumed that it would be a problem because the city is at city limits and we didn't even think about the fact that it
At
had
the time we inherited it from the chamber, they supposed to keep it in the county.
That's right.
And the hotel motel tax sort of came as a logical source that people from out of town or people with, if you go to Bell Buckle, they're still gonna stay in Shelbyville kind of thing.
Yeah.
That probably would be true if you had more than 10 people. There's enough.
for instance, if those people stayed in Shelbyville, we struggle.
Got the hotel motel tax.
They got, the county started one, but we don't get any of
Have
that.
back then.
Not that I'm aware of. I know when I first got elected mayor, we had something that come before us, and I voted no on it because the council had already set the precedent not to do it. And, it finally came through and they got it, but I mean, do we need to stick with that? That was the council's, decision years ago. And, that's the way that I kind of go by what the, ordinance or what the, what it said in the past. So let's think about those things. At least if we have to pull up those, or Ginger, if we have to pull up what the rules and regulations we have and what the council said, let's do that and make sure it's really clear.
Well, it was a policy that I think at the time that council wanted to get out of that business.
Right.
Understanding that doesn't bind any future council. You can always change that if you choose, and I think that's what's happened over time. But you did set a policy, and that's a written policy about how you were gonna do these types of tourism
Right.
issues, which is a little bit different. I like what you said, though, it starts to bleed in. It looks like it's just a donation
Right.
or support of a nonprofit, but your nonprofit, that's been 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah,
I think it really should have gone out, but I
that's
know.
what I was told when I took office,
It would be wise to stick with, like what Henry's talking about, previous councils, which we
Yeah.
evolved, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we don't need to override
We
it.
don't just do it. They made the decision, it's timed out, let's just stay right where we're at.
But anyone a council can vote to change that, you understand?
Right.
But the tourism policy is written, that's somewhere that gives you what those guidelines are. Until you change it, you probably should follow it.
Okay, and we might think about along those same terms, if we had a tourism committee before, we might want to have one again. Let them look at each one of these things. Okay, those are good things for us to discuss and refer back to and research and see, make sure we're doing exactly the right thing. Number 9, power board positions, application notice. How many positions we've got up? I knew we had one. Have we got 2?
Just have one.
Okay.
This is just a standard, motion that'll be on the consent agenda to authorize me to advertise for it. And I'll put it out and ask for, the applications to be back right before your May study session. So then we'll talk about them at the May study session and schedule, interviews at the May business meeting. They'll be before the business meeting. The appointment will be at the end of the May meeting.
And the existing member,
Is
that-
William Cruz.
right, and that existing member will have to be interviewed just the same as the rest of them.
Yes, sir. If he wishes to stay on the board, he will have to put in an
Makes it fair.
application, like everyone else.
All right, so Lisa, for that update, okay, old business, ordinances, second and final reading, public hearing. A is an ordinance of the Shelbyville City Council to amend Article 2 definitions of the City of Shelbyville Municipal Zoning Ordinance by updating Section 2.2 definitions and repeal all previous ordinances or part of an ordinance in conflict therewith. Now, we don't have Tom with us tonight, but we do have Brandy. Hedgepath?
Yes.
All right. Brandy is Tom's right-hand person, and if we need to ask her a question, now Brandy, if there's no questions, then we won't ask you to respond. But if somebody has a question, would you please ask Brandy about that? Or if we need an explanation on what we're talking about.
I will try my best to answer.
Okay? Any comments or questions on that particular first one? Some of these things we've been over and over again. Okay, any question? All right, let's move to B. An ordinance of the Shelbyville City Council to amend Article 3 supplementary provisions and administrative procedures of the City of Shelbyville Municipal Zoning Ordinance by updating Section 3.13 site plan and repeal all previous ordinance or part of the ordinance in conflict therewith. Any questions for Brandy on that? Any questions, fire away. Okay, if not, we'll move to C. An ordinance as amended in parentheses of the Shelbyville City Council to amend Article 5 zoning districts of the City of Shelbyville Municipal Zoning Ordinance by updating Section 5.4.2A medium high density residential districts R3A and sections 5.4.3 high-density residential districts R4, and repeal all previous ordinances or part of an ordinance in conflict therewith. So what we're trying to do is update our, and that's what we're talking about in these decisions on these things. Anybody have a question about that last one? Yes, sir, Mr. Feldhouse.
Right.
Or Henry.
Yeah, when I'm looking at the maximum lot coverage for units, I guess, and it's highlighted here, it says like, right now we have none, but it goes to 20%, right? But right before that, it says the maximum lot coverage is 40%. So is my math wrong when I say, well, you got 60% of the lot that's open space anyway? Or what's the,
Brandy?
how do you? Like both of them had that, 40%.
We didn't get, we voted to change that 20% number to 30%
Right,
last month.
right.
None of that made it into effect.
That's how you call it.
It's not.
I'm sorry,
30%.
I thought that the one that Tom had sent me was the one, and that's why it reads as amended, because it's supposed to be amended from your first reading to have the 30% of, green space and the 15%.
Setback.
No, it wasn't the setback, it was the, I'm sorry, I'll have to find the number.
Coverage on the lot, on it.
15% is the usable open space, 30% is the total open space. And to Mr. Feldhaus's question, understand where your confusion's at, but that open space is not on each lot. That's in the whole subdivision. Units of open space. You leave out roads, you leave out driveways, setbacks, none of that is in that calculation. So that 30% is big chunks of open space that hopefully is a park or a playground or something usable. Yeah, that's
I
not.
see where you're talking about, and
Yeah.
this is not.
It's last month's.
Yes, it is. You're right, because the one that I did, I don't know why it's not the one that's in here, but the one that I did had the amended on it and had the correct attachment to it. So I am sorry, you will get the correct one for your, main meeting.
Randy, do you have anything to add? All right, Josh, go back, have a seat, but I'm gonna read the next one, okay?
Josh explained what Henry.
Does that, Mr. Feldhaus, does that make it clear? Okay, thank you, Josh, for your explanation. He's on the planning committee. Mr. Blevins is. All right, anybody else have anything to say?
Just to apologize for not making sure that that was the correct one. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, we're trying to update that. That 30% figure is very good. I think Mr. Turnbull or somebody had made that recommendation. All right, new business ordinances. A, an ordinance of the Shelbyville City Council to amend the Shelbyville zoning map by approving the rezoning of approximately 8.75 plus or minus acres owned by Pleasant M. England, addressed as 138 McDale Lane, referenced in Bedford County tax records as tax map 069, partial 31, tract 1, and attached as Exhibit A and Exhibit B on a plat from residential R2, medium low density residential, to residential R4, high density residential, and repealing any ordinance, a portion of an ordinance in conflict therewith. Anybody have a question about that? I might make a little comment here.
Yeah,
That's out on the bypass.
Right, yeah, that's on the bypass. We deferred this last month in hopes that we would have some discussion at two meetings that we had later in the month. That discussion didn't happen. I wish Tom was here so we could have that with him. I wonder if maybe we can have it next week. Hopefully he's back with us next week. We still need to decide as a planning department and as a city council, what do we want to put on our bypass? Do we
That's
want to
exactly
have
right. Exactly.
apartment complex? Do you want to
It was
commercial?
zoned R2 for a reason.
Yeah, what do we actually want to put on that bypass? We need to have some kind of vision there rather than just start to let people throw stuff up on there.
And some of the drawing I saw from Tom when we were talking about this, and we're gonna be talking about the property right across, there's a tract 1 that's wanting to be changed to residential R4, and then there's a tract 2 that's commercial on the other side, I think. And Scott and I may have talked about the entrances and exits that they're trying to talk about. Now, McDale, y'all know that that is the next road past the bypass. Okay, so the property is tied into McDale, and then there's property between it and Fairfield Pike where an entrance or an exit could be placed also. Am I right, Scott? And then on McDale too. So it didn't necessarily have to, does it have to come, are they asking for an entrance and exit on the bypass?
They have one.
Question, is there already an existing?
Yes,
Yeah.
if I may.
You might,
When the state did the bypass, all those properties along the bypass do have one standard entrance and ingress and egress.
Okay.
So they have one, and most likely would not be granted by TDOT an extra one on there. Now, it
That's
may
not-
change exactly where it is located along their property line,
Right.
And that's kind of what you're thinking about adopting next week in your CAMA, your
Yeah.
corridor access management agreement,
Right.
about some rules about that, how far distance your driveway access points would be.
Right.
So there may be some things like that that would actually impact right now where the driveways are along 437, but all the properties do have at least one way to get in and out.
They would also, for this property, have access to McDale to get in and out.
On the back side.
And they've already started putting up. They've already, some multi-family housing, yeah, I think that's right.
Okay.
Is this property
Mr. Chris-
visible from 231?
Sir,
No,
No, not 231.
You wouldn't be able to see buildings from
No, it's
231.
past that. I mean, the intersection,
It's on the
intersection, you know, our
You
main
can see it
intersection.
right there.
It's on the right side, that's part.
I was gonna add, they're only allowed one access on each
right.
property.
Right.
So,
One, you mean like one on each side, like one on four
so
thirty-seven
one
and
from
one on?
437.
They can either have either or.
Both.
No, she's saying they're only allowing one access on 437.
Yes,
The bypass.
so you can't have multiple entrances on 437, so it's not gonna be
Right.
staggered on there.
I thought you were asking, excuse me.
I was, if McDale and.
McDale, that is what they were attempting to do.
Coming across that other property, but that'll be worked out between them. But what we're looking at in this particular one I just read is not about the entrances and exits, but it's about changing from R2. Now, everybody know what R2 is? And then from that would be a single family structure with, 10,000 square feet?
Yes.
Each one of them has 10,000 square feet for one house to be put on, is that correct?
It's 7,500.
No, it's 15 for all.
Well, that's setback, I'm talking about
Isn't
the
that
square,
right? I think
square
I'm right.
footage of the lot, yeah, it's 10,000 square feet. So, our vote will be, do we want to change that particular piece of property, it's already R2. Do we want to change it to R4, which would be multifamily housing, which would increase traffic?
Well, once you change that, then the ones that are two on both sides are then susceptible to being changed too.
So that's something for us to think about, this is what they're asking, is the zoning change, right?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. Questions? Ms. Ewing?
Well, I think we're still skipping the fact that, Councilmember Blevins wants to kind of take another look and discuss what exactly we're aiming for when it comes to the bypass. I see that it was passed 6-1, is that right? So all of the boxes obviously are checked for this.
And they may have had this agreement, Ginger, did they have this agreement with property owners when they put the bypass through there? Those property owners already owned that property, and that's the reason they gave them one entrance and exit, because they were cutting, using part of their property?
Was a part, TDOT has to give them
Yeah.
access to the
Yeah.
road. You can't, they have to be able to get to the property.
Even the bypass.
Can't be landlocked.
Yeah,
They're landlocked, yeah.
that's right.
They couldn't get in, so
That's
that
right.
was part of it.
Yeah. But the zoning change, that's something for us to think about.
Is the person in parentheses, is he a owner too?
It's what now?
The person in parentheses, Roger Ridge, is he an owner too?
That's a daughter, I think.
It is.
Liz.
Yeah, I think he's the owner, and there's other investors. I met another gentleman at the meeting and a younger man when we were at the planning commission that were representing. Now, I don't know, but Mr. Rich, I think is the.
He may be-
Primary.
He may be the developer. I do believe,
Yeah.
the name of Pleasant England is the person who owns the property.
Yes.
I don't
I just
know
saw
about
that
the
name.
developer.
And I won't mention names because I don't know who owns what or whatever. Okay, any other questions on that one? All right, and that's track one, that's the residential property. B, I think is the second part of it. An ordinance of the Shelbyville City Council to amend the Shelbyville zoning map by approving the rezoning of approximately 4.68 plus or minus acres, owned by Pleasant M. England, addressed as State Route 437, referenced in Bedford County tax records as tax map 69, parcel 31, tract 2, and attached as Exhibit A and Exhibit B, final plat, R2, commercial C2 general business, and repealing any ordinance or portion of ordinance in conflict therewith. Brenda hit me there, the parcel on the other side of the bypass
Yes, sir.
is what we're talking about now, correct?
Yes, sir.
Questions or comments? Now, they're wanting to go from R2 there to C2.
We need to be careful about that. Put people to commercial, when it's planned.
Questions?
If I may, just hearing what you all said, I think the question for you all for next Thursday night, do you wish to defer the application or just turn it down? It sounds like you really want to explore, particularly we're talking about corridor access management agreement, an overall policy and decision-making on property.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to keep deferring whatever.
Sure.
But we need to make some progress if we're going to defer. We need to actually have the discussion, which we didn't end up on.
But our vote's gonna be whether it's, we want to rezone either one of those pieces of property. That's the vote that we.
Or
But how can we,
Or-
how can
or-
we
defer it next
Yeah.
Thursday night.
rezone without knowing what we're gonna put there?
Right.
You know, what our plan is for
Right.
5 or 10 years down the road. What we hoped.
Right.
And if you all recall, that's the one thing the KCI consultants who did your study that was through the grant through TDOT, that was the one thing that they found in the whole entire study that we didn't match up. We pretty much well matched up with everything with the
Right.
county, with both Bedford and Rutherford counties, our treatment,
Right.
except how the county, Bedford County and the city have been treating development on the bypass. That's where it's a little bit different.
Right. Because a portion of that's in the city and a lot of it's in the county.
That's just.
That's fine.
Let me ask you another, since I'm still, is this property or anything built on it visible from the Cartwright School? Is it closer to it than it is the highway?
It is closer to it.
No,
you can't see it.
Still couldn't see it, somewhere in between the two.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Only to the line on the back of the house.
Council? Anybody else have anything to add? I might ask for, we got our fire chief, the police chief, and as we start expanding, how we're gonna affect you guys. And y'all have already probably looked at it as far as working with Tom. Okay. Okay. Randy, you have any comments?
Well, just the actual summarized synopsis of it, it's, pretty much it adopts, consistent and compatible to our adopted maps and plans for future development, coordinated with the zoning ordinance. We've, had a comparison for the current and existing land uses for compatibility, of buffering between dissimilar land uses, and the consideration for highest and best use of the zone, requested zoning and compared to the existing neighborhood land uses for compatibility. But I do kind of understand what Councilman Blevins said, that he wanted to, reconsider looking at it, having the discussion. So, and identifying the conflicts and incompatibilities and inconsistencies adopted by the plans and regulations that may require future amendments.
And that buffering, they're talking about trees or some kind of vegetation or something in there that just could put up walls, whatever, in those situations, to kind of buffer it from the roadway on both sides. Okay.
Throwing a stone around.
Okay. Any other comments or questions, Matt? Brandy, we've got another one here, or two, that we might need you on. C, an ordinance of the Shelbyville City Council to amend table of contents, Article 5, zoning districts of the Shelbyville Municipal Zoning Ordinance by updating table of contents, Article 5, Section and section 5.1, classification of districts. Article 5, is there something left out there? It says section, or maybe that's just the headline there. Section 5.1, classification of districts. Article 5, section 5.8, planned unit development, and repeal all previous ordinance or part of an ordinance in conflict herewith. Okay, what we're talking about there, I think, is just changing. Scott, Josh, you want to jump in there? You remember?
I do. Like I said, I've got a question for Lisa and then a point of discussion. We made several amendments to this at Plain. None of those were in the stuff in the packet.
That's
You know
correct.
that, you're gonna get those.
Unfortunately, Tom was not able to make the changes. He had a family emergency on Friday, you know, the meeting was Thursday.
Right.
Had a family emergency on Friday and he himself was sick.
Yeah.
So he has not made the changes, but he will have them made prior to
Love
the
it.
next meeting.
Okay, the point of discussion is, and this is what we discussed, well, there's two big things happening here. First, the 30% is already in there that we agreed to on the multifamily, so we fixed that. But the point of discussion is spacing between buildings in a PUD. The way it's currently presented to us, there's a minimum spacing of 15 feet, but there's an allowance for the developer to come back and request something smaller, like 10 feet. Do we want to remove that allowance to ask for a smaller space, or do we want to up that minimum space to 20 feet and then allow them to come back and ask for an exception? That's really basically the question. That's more a question for the chief delegate.
And I think
Less than 15 feet has always been, I've always heard it's a fire hazard. Is that
It's not preferable.
not preferable? Yeah.
I'm gonna be, y'all.
Yeah.
Is there any reason we could do 20 feet and not put the option in to go smaller?
I think and I can correct me if I'm wrong, but, the 15 feet was actually more in line with the building, the 2018 code that as adopted.
Right.
So that should be our minimum. So that was the 15 or 7.5 feet for one and 7.5 feet for the other. But yes, for our purposes, 20 would be great. So that would be 10 and 10.
Right, yeah.
So
And so we could leave out the option to come back. It's just simply 10 and 20 feet. I think that would be even better for a PUD.
Yeah, have y'all seen that house?
Safer and
that they're
look
gonna-
better.
That house that they're gonna give away on TV for whatever it is, $875,000, you can touch them both. You can stand between them and touch them both. $875,000. We won't get in there.
And we talked about the other day, of course, our person is here, and he and I have gone through and looked at some things, and of course, the rest of us have too. But we're trying to protect the citizens from these developing situations where fire hazards and trying to get to there to put out a fire or whatever, and police department too, probably trying to get access and get in between buildings and things like that. But, we also discussed if they put them 15, what kind of construction they'd have to have on those walls for fire protection.
Yeah.
There's so many hours of heat.
Right,
Yeah.
it's a two
Yeah.
hour,
Two
is it 2 hour,
or-
2 hour fire?
or 4.
Yeah.
That was,
One.
Yeah.
If it's less than 15, does it have to be 2 or does it go at 4?
I believe if it's fit, I'm not gonna.
Yeah, we have to go back to
Yeah, I
that
have to
planning
go back.
commission discussion.
Where we're getting less than that, then we're getting, where we're going to be very restrictive about building materials
Yes.
and or residential sprinkler systems to offset some of that risk.
Well, I'd like to see the 20 option, 20 foot minimum option at least presented next week.
I wouldn't be opposed to some.
Anything that 20 would consistent.
And all we're trying to do is protect the people that are buying these homes.
Don't you think the builders ain't looking at that, saying, hey, let's put them bad boys in there as close as we can get them?
Yeah, yeah. You could almost, on some of the houses I've seen, where the 2 units are almost touching. Accessory units and that.
Yep.
Yeah.
We need to protect that.
Okay. All right, folks, that's something for us to, look at and discuss. And of course, Tom is available and Brandy is too. Anytime you need to talk to those folks before we get into the voting process.
Mr.
Sir?
Mayor, just to
Ma'am?
be clear, I just
Okay.
want to make sure everybody understands. The ordinance that will be put in front of you next week will be the one with the planning commission's recommendations, which don't include what you talked about tonight.
Right.
So if you want that, somebody will have to make an amendment to it
At that time.
Okay, right. Okay.
That's
Thank you,
correct.
Lisa, for clarification on that.
And may I also say,
Ginger?
I had wanted some language tweaks, that's what Tom is doing, not substantive, but language tweaks to make certain about how the adoption, the amendment reads, and so that's one of the other things he's working on.
Okay.
Not substantive changes, though.
All right, D, an ordinance of the Shelbyville City Council to amend City of Shelbyville design standards by updating section 3E, architectural guidelines, and section 3H, multifamily residential developments, repeal all previous ordinance or part of an ordinance in conflict herewith. What we're discussing there, I think, Randy, you correct me if I'm wrong, or Josh, we're talking about the way it looks on the outside and what materials can be used as far as in those design phases and architectural design.
Yes, sir.
And also trying to, if we have them, not all of them looking just exactly alike, having some kind of a variation of those kind of things. Am I right? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Any questions for folks? This is on multifamily and, yeah. We're just updating that design to make it look a lot better and more attractive. Okay. And the building materials to, better quality, I think, right?
Yes, sir.
Is that the right word? Okay. Any question for Brandy? Brandy, you can have a seat.
We still got heat head.
Huh?
Is he not good?
Budget.
I think that was the last one on that one.
Yeah.
And, yeah, the next one.
I have a question.
You're right here.
I've noticed, I was told for instance, the row of strip houses that are on Green Lane that are for sale, there's about 8 of them together with signs out in front of them. I understand they're the 200, but I also understand the HOA is $250 a month. Who determines the cost of the HOA before houses are sold? I thought that was the organization that did that. Does the builder do it?
The HOA, and oftentimes the developer has control of the HOA until a certain number or percentage has been sold to other people. It's all private, that is not.
So he sets the developer sets.
The developer, or it's truly the HOA, but if he or she still owns all the property, that would be the developer.
Some of them, I've seen some in town are higher than that. $250 is a lot to their monthly payment.
That's why this may be sitting empty for a while.
Yeah, they're all empty.
Thank you, Brandy.
Thank you.
Okay, E, we thank Brandy for helping us tonight. E, an ordinance, and Josh, appreciate it. An ordinance to make amendments to the adopted budget ordinance as amended of the city of Shelbyville, Tennessee, various funds for the fiscal year 2024-2025, the period ending June 30, 2025. So that just gives Kay the opportunity to make amendments. Kay, do you have anything to say, please?
I'll be glad to take any questions or go over whatever you want me to on these. The majority are just, putting in debit and credit form what the council has approved since last July. That was outside the budget, the original budget. There are a few kind of routine, but not specifically approved. What I mean by that is each year we typically take insurance recoveries that we get and put them back into the budgets where those departments had to make the repairs. That's just kind of a standard when we do each year. So I've done that. That's on page 3. It's just kind of moving the money from revenue to expenditures. On the page 4, we have a couple, departments that have some designated fund balances. That means the money can only be used for specific purposes. We have a sex offender registry fund, and the police department needed to buy a computer for the personnel that oversee that program. So that's that That's why it's got cents on it, because we have to keep up to that, to the penny, so I'm moving that specific amount. And the fire department, over the years, has taken public donations to go toward purchasing smoke detectors and toys for children at Christmas time. They have since, they had about 16,000 of that left. They have since set up a foundation. So the foundation will be handling that in the future, but this is to use up some of the money we already had on hand. The drug fund, we now have 2 canines for drug-related policing, and we also had purchased a bite suit. So this is just adding a couple more thousand to that budget since we have twice the number of dogs now. And I know y'all can read all this, but the last one is, last year the state of Tennessee gave across the state 2 training supplements to the police departments. And so we received the revenue that got posted to 1 year. We didn't pay it until this fiscal year. So that money would have gone into fund balance, and this is just pulling it back out to add to the police budget this year where it was paid from. I don't know if any of that made sense, but if you see any, you have a specific question, I'll be glad to try to answer it. And
I didn't realize that we had 2 dogs.
right, I don't know their
2
names
dogs,
right off.
handlers, all that training, all of that. Did that come before the council?
Yeah, we already had 1 dog, and then we bought another one through the drug fund, a year or 2 ago.
Yeah, about a year ago, I think it was. We had another one to come on.
One retired, and
We had, yeah,
One-
we had
one
2,
retired,
and 1
yeah.
retired, and then a few months later, they brought forward to buy second ones,
Right.
basically.
Out of the drug fund?
I think so, yeah. Anything out of the drug fund.
well, we got one through a VCIF grant. I believe. And soccer fields, I didn't know if we would spend any money for that by June 30th. You know, I know the council voted for the $770,000 cash match.
Right.
So I just put 25,000 in case the engineer or architect builds something before June 30. At least we'll have some money sitting there, but I'll still budget it for next year. This is just kind of to cover both sides of June 30,
Okay.
so we don't have any surprises.
Okay.
And we're supposed to get right on that to start getting private donations, aren't we?
We've got to have a plan first.
Yeah.
So we've got to get the engineers in place. And if you all do that, next month, then they'll start working on the plan and get the footprint of the Oklahoma complex. Yeah.
Questions? Good job, all departments on that, updating that with the amendments, okay? If no questions, thank you, Kay. All right, resolutions. Resolution A is a resolution of the mayor and city council of the city of Shelbyville, Tennessee, adopting an updated standard operating policy for the city of Shelbyville Fire Department. Everybody remembers those that came through, and we looked over that. You got any questions for our fire chief? Matt Doak is with us tonight. Any questions about that? All right. Thank you, Chief, for being here. Okay, the next item is B, a resolution of the mayor and city council of the city of Shelbyville, Tennessee, authorizing a grant application with the state of Tennessee Department of Agriculture for animal-friendly spay and neuter grant. Lisa, you would update us on that, please?
Yes, sir, this is a annual grant that we apply for, and I think we pretty much get it every year. It's no local match, and it's $5,000 goes to Animal Control to help with spay and neuter.
We got 1,200 last year. We tried to get more, but it just depends on how many people apply and how much money they have.
Man, I couldn't give you a chance to, did you need to speak about that fire?
No, sir, it's just, we just do that periodically, update.
Thank you, sir.
It's really not changed from the last time, from last month, we just did some reformatting to it.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. All right, C, a resolution of the Shelbyville City Council to authorize the mayor of Shelbyville Tennessee to sign a corridor access management agreement for US 231 from Snell Road to New Center Church Road to Volunteer Road. It's 231 South, isn't it?
Oh,
Snell, I'm trying to think, of New Center Church is down off the Fayetteville Highway there, right? Okay. Okay, Scott, you want to talk about that, please?
Just want to comment, this is based on the work that was presented to you all last week during the corridor access management agreement work session. And, this is just closing out the grant in essence, and Buck may, Public Works Director may want to make a comment, but I think we'll get to go.
Okay. We're very fortunate to have 231 and 41A main highways coming through Shelbyville. I'm really pleased to have that, aren't you?
Yes.
At 64 and 437 now? That's exactly right. Thank you, sir. D, a resolution of the Shelbyville City Council to authorize the mayor of Shelbyville, Tennessee, to sign a corridor access management agreement for US 41A from Normandy Road to Rutherford County and Bedford County boundary. Did that read right? The US Rutherford County and Bedford County boundary. Okay. Anything you need to comment on that, Scott?
No, sir.
Okay. Questions? All right. E, a resolution of the Shelbyville City Council to authorize the mayor of Shelbyville, Tennessee, to sign a corridor access management agreement for State Route 437 in its entirety, including Bedford County. So that would include all of 437. All right. Okay. Any questions or comments? The Carter study was really good. We got to sit in on that. It was really good. They did a great job on that. Business items, purchasing and bid items, CDBG grant, Berry Street sidewalk improvements, sealed bid response. Miss Lori, would you come forward? Lori Sadler. That was quick. I didn't even hear you make a step. This Lori Sadler, our purchasing department.
Yes, sir. We had a bid opening, Mayor, March 17th. 2 bids were received for the CDBG sidewalk improvement Deary Street project. Pearl Construction, War Trays, $489,786.75. Hawkins and Price LLC, War Trays, $455,950. A project of this size, of course, is managed by an engineering firm, Will Owens with Griggs and Maloney. He provided documentation that I included with this staff summary. The bid, just to note, this bid was advertised in a local newspaper and on vendor registry, which has a statewide reach. Griggs and Maloney posted it on online plan rooms, 5 online plan rooms, which provide exposure to a large audience. It's always our hope that we'll get a lot of bids, but this one only attracted 2. We also extended it an extra 2 weeks to increase the possibility for more bids. So I feel like we did a lot to get this out there. I think it's the size of the project that, kind of kept the bidders local. Per Will's letter, he's done all the tabulation. He's done all the follow-up work with their licenses and their monetary limits with TDOT. And they are recommending the low bid from Hawkins and Price, $455,950. I do want to point out his 4th paragraph. It is exciting to present a bid for award consideration that is within the grant budget. That doesn't always happen. And we are glad this is below the grant total of $515,762. Now, we all know change orders are possible, but we are very pleased with the way both bids came in.
Thank you.
Lord, nobody will bid. I mean, you could just mark off Nobody will bid on a $450,000 project. Instead them two.
Well, I know it seems like a lot of money to us, but, Buck and I talked about that, at the bid opening, I believe. It's a small project technically. We were talking about mobilization these days, and, like I said, I just wanted to, I want as many bids to come in as possible, because I love competition. But, the fact that Will listed it on 5 plan rooms, online plan rooms. I sent it out on vendor registry, which I know it went to at least 90 engineering firms on vendor registry. I don't know what else we can do. We extended it 2 weeks.
And everybody's so busy right now
They are.
in Middle Tennessee.
I think though, and Buck could, comment on this, I really think it's the size of the project.
Okay. Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Lauren.
So it's currently in Spring Street, the parking lot, the live building, right?
It's Pearl,
Yeah.
on Spring
Yeah.
Street.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
So now one of them, they'll have one of these, so.
Okay, thank you. Okay, appointments is the next item. Safe and Affordable Housing Committee, and that was a city council representative. And, I want to applaud Mr. Feldhouse for stepping forward and volunteering to do that. Mr. Feldhouse, that's exactly right. He said he would volunteer to do that, and I appreciate it. Because I had tried to name 2 or 3, and it just didn't work out. But I appreciate him coming in. Safe and Affordable Housing Committee, renter member, representative, and our former city council member, Stephanie Isaacs, who was here earlier in the meeting, will be our representative there. She has volunteered to be the representative for the renter member representation on the Safe and Affordable Housing Committee. Those folks are doing a good job trying to help all of folks, landlords, renters, low-income housing, all kinds of different things. County Equalization Board, Joanne Gaunt. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. She is on that board right now, and she would be okay with be renaming to that board. And that is the board that kind of meets one time a year, I think you said, and what they do is to look at the property assessment on our property. We only have one, our county property assessor, and so that kind of gives us county and city people on there to see that everybody is being assessed properly. Other business, community care event tickets. All right. We have emailed out and everything else. We have table 4. Now, this is a community care event. This is for dental and medical, but they're having it at Nearest Green at Humble Baron. And that is on April the 12th, I believe. And we do have a table available for the city. And please let us know if you'd like to. We don't want that empty table sitting there. It's reserved for the city. We would like for folks to be there. Now, it is a semi-formal event, I think. I think it's a semi-formal event, black tie event. So please let Lisa know. We've got the tickets tonight. And if we can't do that, we'll try to get those to someone that can, but we would like to have our city council members, really like to have our city council members there if we possibly could.
Are you speaking?
I'm sorry?
Are you speaking?
Well, I was going to, but I don't know right now where I'll be available. We'll just have to see. I've got some medical situations, so I have to deal with that, okay? Okay. And we may ask someone that represents us to do that. Proclamation, proclamation tonight. Okay? And it may be I may get to be there.
Don't have to tell her.
Won't they be blessed? Okay, announcements. I'll ask Miss Lisa Smith, our city reporter, to make the announcement for.
She's already paid.
Sorry.
I didn't hear that.
I'm sorry, I might be ready to go. City administration offices will be closed on Friday, April 18th, 2025, in observation of Good Friday.
Okay. Do we have any other business or any other announcements to make? If not, let's adjourn this meeting.
And of course, the